Hi there, welcome to the GXM podcast, where we explore news and topics around video game music and the intersection between the games and music industries. We aim to publish fortnightly, so please be sure to subscribe and do share with friends and colleagues who you think might be interested. Joining me, Tom Quillfeldt, is my co-host Mat Ombler. Matt, I understand you may be a little bit weary of some of the bigger games you've been playing and not quite finding the time to play. You promised you'd play some RoboBeat. How's that going?
On the last episode, I made a promise that I would play the rhythm shooter RoboBeat because it sounds just like it's up my street. Action rhythm shooter, yes, give me that. And then I found out that it's only on Steam. I think I am one of the few people who just doesn't use Steam, because I've had this quite a lot where I've been given codes for games to play and stuff like that, or a new game comes out, it looks really cool, I go to check it out, boom, Steam only. So I didn't play RoboBeat. What did I do? Retreat to Final Fantasy VII Rebirth instead, which I just want to be over now. Why have you dived back into Elden Ring?
So I had a Cane and Rinse episode where it's a review panel, and we finally tackled the enormous Elden Ring. It was like a 2-hour, 50-minute podcast recording. So I had to dive back into it. I loaded up my late game character just to see what the heck was going on. And also the DLC is coming out soon. And I'm thinking Rebirth is so kind of big. I'm kind of enjoying dipping away from it. For things like Alan Wake 2 for work and Bug Snacks with the kids and Remnant 2 with a buddy. So yeah, I may even just go straight for the Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree DLC, which is out very soon. I'm looking forward to seeing whether with Shadow of the Erdtree they mix up the music or they change something or try something different, or whether they carry on with the kind of very ambient stuff and then obviously the boss music, which we're used to from Software stuff. So yeah.
I've just got AAA fatigue. I just don't think I can handle another massive AAA game. To be fair, I bounced off Elden Ring though. I think I just tapped out.
They're too big. I mean, we've been joking about soundtracks that are too long. I mean, games are flipping too long as well. It's just they're for me. I mean, I'm not in my 20s. We're not in our 20s, Matt. We're old. That's what happens when life comes along. You just don't have time for 200-hour games.
Takes months to complete a video game now. Months.
Yeah, exactly.
Can fit in two games a year. That's it.
Yes. Well, the trick is, you see, that's where the Nintendo Switch comes in, because if you really want to play a game, it has to be on the Switch. Or I guess if you're going to go for Steam Deck, that might help you out with your conundrum. And you just have to get little sessions in as you go to bed. Like, instead of reading a book, going to bed or whatever, spend like 20 minutes. That's how I got through Persona 5. It's the only way to fit it into your life.
I think that is the only way. And because to be fair, I love that on public transport and stuff, but I've got a car as well, so I still drive most. But I might just sell my car
and buy a Steam Deck instead.
For the good of gaming, sell my car so I can just fully commit to gaming on the go.
With that, let's get into the news. So quite a lot here, Matt, and quite a lot of stuff that you've unearthed or that I would say is in your wheelhouse. The first story is about Bring Me the Horizon. What have they been up to?
Yep, so thankfully albums still only take 40 or 50 minutes to listen to from start to finish, so I've still got plenty of time to listen to music. Bring Me the Horizon have put out their latest album, Posthuman Next Gen. It is the first Bring Me the Horizon album since the departure of keyboard player Jordan Fish, who was also essentially the brains of the band alongside Ollie, the vocalist. He did a lot of the songwriting, so fans were kind of left wondering what this album was going to sound like. I don't know if you've had time to listen to it yet, but as a Bring Me the Horizon fan of heavy music in general, but also pop music, this, similar to their other albums, it kind of sits in the middle. What's interesting about this album is, just like the last album, where Doom's composer Mick Gordon was involved with production, it looks like once again vocalist Ollie Sykes has turned to Mick Gordon for inspiration, this time by hiding a QR code within a spectrogram. So, here's what happened. a fan basically played the album from start to finish, heard loads of weird noise on the last song in the album, thought, this sounds like a little bit too weird. I'm going to open up this song in Audacity and see what is happening. Opens it up in Audacity, finds a QR code within the audio files, scans it, takes him to this hidden cryptic website, which is like fully Bring Me the Horizon branded and all of that, but it's password protected. So the Bring Me the Horizon army then comes in, starts trying to figure out how to unlock this website, but not only that, once you unlock the website, there are like all of these files as well in various folders, which are also password protected. So I think near 2 weeks after the album's come out, at the time of recording, people are still trying to access some files and figure out the passwords and stuff. But it is the exact same technique that Mick Gordon used in the Doom 2016 soundtrack, where he hid Easter eggs in spectrograms, which were just basically pentagrams, and like 666 in the game's audio files, which is hilarious. But would recommend the album to anyone who hasn't heard it. It is a banger.
So would you say that this whole album release constituted a sort of a game in and of itself?
A game in and of itself, absolutely. It's definitely not a typical playable video game. There seems to be a trend that I've spotted at the moment with a lot of artists who are kind of putting out these browser-based video games or small mobile video games where they'll be essentially like runner games or something really simple based around a theme or concept from the album. This is more of a video game in terms of it's an alternative reality thing, in terms of you've got the fans coming together, trying to figure out specific passwords. But you know what? I actually wouldn't be surprised if once the fans unlock these certain files, there might be a video game hidden somewhere within all of this. Like, there is still a lot of stuff that is yet to be uncovered. We know Ollie and the rest of the band are big gamers. They've previously written original music for Gran Turismo and Death Stranding, so we will wait and see. But either way, like, this is a unique way to promote an album when you've kind of got 4,000 fans rallying together on a Discord, just trying to figure out what to do.
Yeah, it's excellent. It reminds me of Trent Reznor. I seem to recall did some ARG stuff back in the day. And it's kind of like an inverse marketing campaign. It's a bit like From Software games, really, where you hide some of the most interesting stuff deeper for super fans to get to first, and then the word spreads out. So rather than it being an upfront marketing campaign where they're like, look at me, come and hear this, it's rewarding the people who are going to go the deepest, and then word trickles out afterwards, and that helps build hype.
100%. I think that's one of the coolest ways to promote a game. It happens, doesn't it, when a game comes out and then fans will be like, hang on a second, this artwork was on a poster within the prequel like 6 months ago. Like, then they'll start piecing things together. Developers are constantly dropping those carrots, like someone's going to figure this out, but probably not. I love that kind of stuff.
It is a very good way, I think, of building excitement. And from one metal band to another, Dragon Force, no strangers to video games. What have they been up to?
They have written a new song for a new character in Supercell's new mobile game, Brawl Stars. This is like the typical sort of power metal song you'd expect from Dragon Force. Why is it in a mobile game? That's because the new character Draco is apparently a heavy metal loving character, so there's a natural fit there. I know you had some really cool thoughts on power metal as a genre not really being taken too seriously, so that lends itself well to this genre of games. But I think it's worth noting as well that this song was actually uploaded, it's got its debut through the Supercell YouTube channel, which is incredibly popular, has loads of subscribers, and as a result, this song managed to pick up 10 million views in like less than 24 hours, which I'm pretty sure is more views than like a normal Dragon Force song would just get like original music. It was just put out through normal channels. And as you mentioned as well, Dragon Force as well, no strangers to the world of video games. They've written original music for Beat Saber, but also in their spare time just seem to release songs that are inspired by video games and just the video game industry in general. There's a cool song that was put out, I think on the YouTube channel a couple of months back, just a Legend of Zelda inspired power metal song, because why not?
And of course, Dragon Force famously had the hardest song in, was it Guitar Hero or was it Rock Band?
Guitar Hero 2, Through the Fire and the Flames, which is just a ridiculous song to play.
They've got a long history now with video games. Yeah, I was watching this video. It made me think of Poets of the Fall in Alan Wake 2 as well, and how this kind of like power metal, I guess, I don't want to get the genre wrong, but it's, yeah, like power metal, melodic metal, fun, upbeat metal. They just don't take themselves seriously at all. And it lends itself so well to video game tie-ins. So with Alan Wake 2, you've got Poets of the Fall in the game, getting involved in this sort of fun number. And Dragon Force look like they have an absolute blast shooting a video for Brawl Stars. And I just thought, we know that Pokemon artists getting involved with Pokemon, Ed Sheeran, Katy Perry, Post Malone are up for something silly as well, like the silly side of that kind of video game. And it makes me think that maybe there is a bit of a divide, or something that might be harder for a super cool artist or an artist who is sort of protecting the seriousness of their brand, that might keep them at arm's length from certainly this kind of video game tie-in. But, well, it probably just goes to show that it's like the right artist has to come to the right game and vice versa.
100%. And I think it's about fun, ultimately. Like, I think it's reasonable in the same way you've drawn comparisons with Poets of the Fall, who are, like, I would class that as power metal, by the way, because it's just power chords in major keys. Do you know what I mean? Everything just sounds so happy and upbeat. But I think you can draw similar comparisons with Tenacious D, Jack Black's band. Do you know what I mean? Like, I saw them live just over a month ago, and their song lyrics and the way they perform, it's just basically two guys having a laugh. Do you know what I mean? Some of the themes their songs were about are just ridiculous. And they wrote a song called Video Games, famously, which I believe was also played at Jeff Keighley's, the video game concert, the live one. They got him down for that as well, Jack Black, to play that. So I think there is this link, definitely, between certain types of music, specifically rock music, not taking yourself too seriously, and then that finding a place within video games. But then quickly on your point about cool artists, I think you can also still do that and be cool. I mean, I think I mentioned Japanese Breakfast, who did the Sable soundtrack, but I guess on the similar rock metal vibe for Dragon Force and Poets of the Fall, obviously Halo 2, Steve Vai, the guitar playing in that, do you know what I mean? And that's serious, it's cool, but there's an element there, I think, of like, as soon as you're rocking out and riffing, there's almost like a cheesiness like associated with that, do you know what I mean? That I think just it works really well with certain video games.
And speaking of Post Malone, I mentioned with the Pokemon stuff, he's been doing some stuff with Roblox. There's a story here about Live at the Louvre gig, streaming live in Roblox. As far as you're aware, is this one of the first or few genuinely live concerts to be experienced through a video game?
This is definitely the first actual live concert on Roblox, because they announced it as a platform first. Why do I say actually live? It's because, and some listeners will know this, but some weren't, the vast majority of virtual concerts or music events or whatever else that take place in video games or on gaming platforms like Roblox are not live, even though they're often dubbed as live in press releases and articles and stuff like that. Why they're not live? Because they are literally not being played live. They're normally pre-recorded experiences that are just put into the game and will play at a certain time. Whereas this was literally a digital twinning of Post Malone's concert as he was performing. Personally, I think there's a lot of potential for this sort of stuff in other video game platforms and video games in general. I think the idea of just kind of planting a screen in like a gamified environment, which is essentially what this Roblox experience was, that can work really well. And I would like to consider what else can be done from a creative perspective, where it's not just music, but it's kind of maybe it's cinema or TV. Do you know what I mean? Like being streamed into a game, but gamers still get to enjoy those experiences in a digital environment with their gaming friends, the people they have on Xbox Live or PlayStation Network. Do you know what I mean? Like,
we've spoken about how appealing or not kind of virtual reality concerts are to reach mainstream or even the mainstream of a particular artist's fan base. But it's the social aspect, isn't it? Experiencing things with other people adds a lot to an experience, like gigs in real life, funnily enough. But I can see some cool, like you're saying, the cinema idea is quite cool. Like I can see, it's in my mind at the moment, Alan Wake 2. I can see like you going into like a small town cinema in Alan Wake 2 and sitting down and watching like a short film festival of like weird psychedelic stuff that if Remedy did some kind of like contest for short films or something like that. Yeah, you could see virtual worlds, video game experiences adding something to the experience of catching a show or catching a different piece of art, through the medium of video games. However, it's got to kind of improve on the experience, because if it doesn't, then, if it's just, like you say, a screen within a world that you're viewing through a screen, I don't know how much you can add to that as things stand.
You want to do cool stuff with your friends, do you know what I mean? Like, we still get together and watch, like, when they do the Game Awards and things like that, like, just like I did with my friends when I used to watch E3 with them. Like, there's something about coming together. Like you were saying, that's what you do when you go to gigs, isn't it? Like, you go down to gigs together, you enjoy that same experience together. If this provides people with the opportunity to do that who might not necessarily have that many friends in real life or can't do stuff that easily, I think it's a really cool stuff. But yeah, as you mentioned, it just needs to...
It needs to be additive.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, people would accept a drop in like streaming quality if what was being added was of social value. And speaking of real world things, Tom Regan, the journalist, the writer via The Guardian, posted an interview, a very early interview actually, about a game set in a vinyl shop. The game is called Wax Heads. Tom interviewed the game's co-creator Murray Summerwolf, and it's a sort of very early preview because I think the devs are still looking for a publisher. But what's really interesting is that the game is really it's like a point-and-click adventure or puzzle game, because you're trying to work out what to recommend different people who come into the vinyl shop. And people might remember the book or the film of High Fidelity. So the quote from Murray Summerwolf is, he said, "I really love music and I wanted to scratch that itch of sitting in the cultural space of music as opposed to just making a rhythm game." So that's a kind of a music-based game of a different order. I'd be very curious to see what they do with music in the game. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that if they haven't yet got a publisher, they probably won't license real music, which would be interesting to see what solution they come up with. But they may, they may get a publisher, they may sort music licenses, and they may come up with something really, really cool. But I just thought the idea was really sweet.
There's a top-rated comment on, I think it's the official trailer for the game on YouTube, where basically someone says there's a really cool opportunity here to promote independent artists. I think, like you said, it's probably unlikely that there's going to be licensed music in this, but that does sound like quite a cool idea. Imagine being able to buy like records for like actual artists and listen to their music in the game, and then you throw in all of the game's mechanics around that and stuff and have conversations about that music. But I'm going to check it out. Sounds cool.
It's a good opportunity for artists to reach out to the devs, maybe, maybe even a collective of artists, because it just reminds me a tiny bit of like Hotline Miami and how they pulled that soundtrack together in the first place. Like it could end up being a kind of a jukebox experience of its own, and the soundtrack might live on outside the game. Possibly. And there's some sad news, Matt. What's been happening with legendary game composers?
I got sent this news by a friend, and when someone you don't know passes away, but it feels like someone like you do know, like this genuine, like I had to stop and I was like, I can't believe this. Video game composer Jeff Furlin, of the Furlin brothers, his brother Tim Furlin as well, also a very good game composer. Two of the biggest chip composers, I think, ever. Like, always worked on these video games where the games themselves actually weren't that good, but the soundtracks were just always incredible. So yeah, unfortunately, Jeff Furling has passed away after a short battle with cancer. He actually quit the video game industry in 1995, presumably after working on so many like dud games, but the amount of love there is for his music and the music that he worked on with his brother as well, because they also worked in pairs. Some of the games that they worked on, and honestly, if you're listening to this now and you hear these game names and think, just another licensed game, that doesn't sound like it's going to have a good soundtrack, listen to X-Men in Arcade's Revenge on the SNES. Genuinely one of the best chip soundtracks ever. Similarly, Terminator 2 on the NES as well. Spot the video game on Game Boy. Solstice 2 on NES. So many amazing games, but if I'm going to have to pick any of them, I would say you need to check out Silver Surfer on the NES. Again, doesn't sound like it should have a good soundtrack, but it's just ridiculous. Like, worth mentioning as well, obviously, I'm a big fan of prog, so I've got to mention this. Loved prog rock music, and you can just hear that in like all of Jeff Furling's soundtracks. So yeah, genuinely, absolutely gutted that this man, this legend, has passed away. If you're not familiar with his work and the games that he's worked on, you can find most of the soundtracks on YouTube, vast majority of them, if not all of them. Apart from Plock, actually. Plock got an official release. Have never had an official release, so check out those soundtracks on YouTube.
We've got some lighter stories to close up. First, this is very silly. Japanese retailer Onkyo Direct, this is reported by Rock Paper Shotgun. Onkyo Direct is selling 2 varieties of official Nier Automata wine matured in barrels with speakers attached to them that pump that play the game's soundtrack into the casket or something, like they've been aged along to the soundtrack. I mean, it's very silly. It's not even news, is it? It's just a novelty within a novelty.
This is news because, you know what? This is the kind of thing where I love wine, and I am convinced that when I hit my 40s, maybe 50s, maybe 60s, I feel like wine snob is somewhere on my timeline. Like, I just know I'm going to go down that route. And this is the kind of thing where I really hope there's like a massive Nier fan in Japan who is also like a huge wine connoisseur, but all of his friends, none of them play video games. So they come round, he brings out this new wine. They're kind of like, oh, this is nice. What's this? And takes a sip, turns around. This was actually aged whilst it was listening to video game soundtracks, specifically the music from Nier. That's why it tastes so delicious. Like, I just love the idea of that popping up in conversation. But apparently, from the comments that I've seen on forums, it is not actually a decent wine. It's quite it's quite a cheap wine.
So it actually tastes like robot tears.
Yeah. There we go.
And then lastly, Rolling Stone put out a slightly misnamed best game soundtracks of all time, but really it should have been called best licensed game soundtracks of all time. Some understandable bangers in there, and GTA Vice City topped it. My personal favourite, I think, would be GTA San Andreas, and that was extremely high.
Yeah.
But what are some of... I noticed some absolute Mac classics in the top 10.
Literally, like, my top 3. So I didn't spend much time with GTA, so I think it'd be in there somewhere, but definitely not at number 1. But number 2 was Tony Hawk's Pro Skater. I genuinely don't think you can argue with that. Number 3, which I really respect, was Life is Strange, because that's like exactly where I'd put it. It's not the kind of game soundtrack you'd normally see feature so high up in a list. There were some other bangers in here as well. Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy, Brutal Legend, Gran Turismo 2, which had loads of licensed music in the US, in the PAL versions of the game as well, not in Japan. Burnout 3 Takedown. Are there any games in here that you played when you were a kid, or are there any licensed game soundtracks that when you were reading through this you thought were cruelly omitted?
I can't recall exactly. Well, the problem is it's also subjective. So, like, Gran Turismo 2's in here, but my game was Gran Turismo 1. So yeah, it's a tricky one. It's some odd picks. Last of Us Part 2 is in there, which I suppose makes sense.
There's like 2 or 3 songs though in it that are licensed. You know what I mean? I think that is an odd pick.
I mean, there's a lot of sports games, racing games, fighting games, which have never particularly been my home genres, but they've gone for, well, Metal Gear Solid 5, The Phantom Pain is a favourite. The 80s stylings of that. It's kind of a weird and wacky soundtrack overall for that game that provides some good juxtaposition, because I was like I found like a cassette for Aha Take On Me, and I stuck that on one of the side missions or whatever. I was throwing the decoys, like the inflatable decoys, but if you throw them under someone, they like expand and like shoot soldiers up in the air. So I was just having tremendous fun blowing people away to Aha's Take On Me.
Made me think Wipeout is not included in this, but then Rolling Stone is a US publication. I believe the editor's US, and I still kind of think, is there a disconnect with the Wipeout soundtrack and people in the US and Europe? Because over in Europe, UK, like that game and that soundtrack was massive, but I don't know if it was as big.
Yeah, Hotline Miami's in there, but there is a relative rock bias, I would say. To not have like Wipeout 2097 or something in here is a bit of an omission, isn't it, really? But by genre, there's Def Jam Vendetta. We're covering hip hop. We're covering old jazz with the Fallout games, modern releases like Forza Horizon 5. So it's a good spread. But yes, obviously it's subjective. There's always going to be some personal omissions.
Subjective, but Life is Strange, objectively a top 3 video game soundtrack, no matter how you look at it. So that
never number 1, never number 6, always number 3.
Always number 3. I am joined today by Jessica Ashton, music licensing and artist partnership lead at Space Ape. Space Ape, if you are not aware of them, are basically a mobile game studio who have created a long list of mobile games, but one of them as successful games is Beatstar, a rhythm game which is essentially Guitar Hero / Rock Band, like for mobile. It features some of the biggest artists in the world. So to tell us all about this and how she got her start in the world of video games is Jessica Ashton. Jessica, thank you so much for joining us. How are you doing today?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you so much for having me on the podcast, Matt. I'm thrilled to be here.
Delighted to have you on, because me and my co-host Tom, we've chatted briefly about Beatstar before. I think we've always wanted to do a deep dive into it because a lot of people are familiar with these massive rhythm games like Guitar Hero and Rock Band and just those games from back in the day. But I don't see that much visibility on mobile games in general, which means I don't think there's that many people in the console space that might be aware of like how successful Beatstar is, and obviously Country Star as well, because you've got the country music spin-off. But before we go into that, can you just tell us a little bit about your background and how you ended up at Space Ape?
Sure, I absolutely can. I mean, I was one of these weirdos that knew from a very early age that music industry was what I wanted to do. I kind of decided that was what I was going to do from like the age of 13. And I was very proactive with trying to get every single opportunity I could get my hands on. I mean, I started working in recording studios when I was 15. And by the time I was in my very early 20s, I did a degree in music management and artist development. I interned as a music journalist, which then led to my first role at Cobalt. And yeah, I never in a million years expected to end up at a mobile gaming studio. It was the last thing on my radar. But I was a huge fan of Beatstar when it first launched and really kind of got into playing that, got really excited. And I think one thing that massively stood out to me with the game was just how well looked after and how well respected the music IP was to Space Ape in Beatstar. And that was just something that was fantastic to see from like a IP perspective. And yeah, I saw an opportunity arise on the Beatstar team a couple of years ago and jumped at it. And yeah, it turned out to be one of the best decisions I've ever made, and absolutely love working in mobile gaming now.
And how many people are there on the actual music team at Space Ape? Because there's so much music going into this game and going into Country Star as well. I imagine there's quite a lot of you there.
So, like the whole team across both games, including, your live ops, your marketing, all of that sort of stuff, we're only a team of about 15 now. But in terms of the music side, we have 3 beat mappers who design all the gameplay. And then I'm solely responsible for the curation, the licensing, the deals, the artist partnerships, the label and publisher relationships. So, yeah, I'm the only music industry person at Space Ape.
And what's it been like then, coming in from the world of music to now working with like game developers and data geeks and all of that behind the scenes stuff where there's like much more of a focus on mobile, I think, and like particularly like compared to console? Like, what's that been like? What's the cross collaboration like between the various areas of the studio?
Yeah, I mean, it took me a lot of getting used to, I'm not going to lie, but it's been a fantastic thing to do. I mean, there was so much with gaming as a whole that I didn't understand and had to get my head around very quickly. But yeah, it's not too different. The music industry is very analytic these days, and so is gaming, especially in the mobile space. So yeah, it's been a great experience, but definitely a big learning curve.
And just looking at how successful Beatstar is now, because literally one of the most popular rhythm games on mobile, countless artists on there. What is it that you think Space Ape did to finally crack like the rhythm game genre on mobile? Because it's fair to say this isn't the first rhythm game on mobile. Like, there's been loads of rhythm games, but I feel like Beatstar is the one that blew up and really got the music industry paying attention to mobile games.
Oh, that's a good question because, I don't know if we've cracked it fully yet. I mean, we're definitely on the way, but I mean, from the beginning, our goal was to create a game that acted as a super authentic platform that we could continue to serve players with new music for years to come. I mean, the team did a lot of iteration on like the core loop design before it launched, and we learned, for example, that you needed to have like an element of surprise in the game because if you let players know what song they were going to unlock, today or tomorrow or whatever, they wouldn't feel the need to come back. And I think because we've added that element of surprise by giving songs away in what we call boxes, it just adds to the mystery of it, really. I mean, we also put a lot of thought into like the core gameplay design. I mean, we have 3 lanes in Beatstar and Country Star as opposed to 2 or 4, because the middle lane is where you have to make a decision on what finger to use. I mean, for guitar and piano players, they would know that, working out the placements of the fingers and is like a key part and the fun part of the learning of a new song. I mean, although we were using games like piano tiles and magic tiles for inspiration, we definitely don't follow the same rules when it comes to those games. Our taps are much more closely timed with the rhythm of the songs, and that makes our gameplay feel a lot more rhythmic, and it's more like playing a real instrument or being like fully immersed in the song, which I think that's the key part that like separates us from other music games.
So for people who have never played Beatstar or Country Star, then can you just talk us through that surprise element? Because I guess if I describe the Guitar Hero formula of track lists, which is kind of where you've almost just got like set lists where you start the game and you can work through and you can see all of the songs that are coming down. You can see the ones that you need to unlock by progressing. And then you've also got a store as well where you can just buy new songs. Like, how does Beatstar change that in terms of the surprise thing that you mentioned?
So we have different journey ranks, and in the first journey rank, you get served a set of songs that's pretty much based on your genre preferences that you start when you fill out the questionnaire at the beginning. But what happens is throughout the game, you collect genre cards, and those cards tally up to a box. And when you've got, let's just say, 10 or 15 cards, the box unlocks. So you have like a rock box and a hip hop box and an R&B box, but you can't choose the song you want to play. We unlock these songs randomly, so the players don't know what's coming next. I mean, we do have like all our songs listed out in like the track list, but they can favorite those songs and they can choose them to add to like their wish list box, which is essentially like their favorite songs. But yeah, we automatically just give them a song that they've picked on their favorite list. And yeah, it's all very random and it keeps the element of surprise going, and they never know what to expect next, because like we have this box called the wish list box. And as I just said, in the track list, the players can select their favorite song as they go into this wishlist box. When they get enough wishlist cards, they'll get a random song from that selection. So yeah, they never know what's coming next, but it will be something they will enjoy.
I love that then, because that encourages you to engage with music that you might not have taken a chance on otherwise. And I guess comparing that to my own experience with these early rhythm games that I grew up playing, and probably for a lot of people as well, coming across all of these like hard rock and like metal bands like from back in the day. So in that sense then, do you think Beatstar and Country Star are also kind of serving as music discovery platforms for players?
100%. We take one with great pride that Beatstar and Country Star are both music discovery platforms. It's something we really try to channel in the curation of the tracks that we put in. I mean, we will include everything from like Sunshine of Your Love by Cream in with like DNA by Kendrick Lamar. And you've got I Still Haven't Found What I'm Looking For by U2 in like Moonlight by Kali Uchis. So the track list that we do put together, albeit they look random on paper, but it's formulated in a way that we want to test the players' boundaries on the music that they like. You know, you've got like 15-year-olds that come into Beatstar and decide to play this music game, and you know, they've got their favorite artists in there, like the Post Malones and Kendrick Lamars and Wiz Khalifas of the world, but then they'll discover The Trooper by Iron Maiden, and you know, that's as new to them as, you know, a brand new Billboard Hot 100 track that's in the game.
I love that. And I'm just looking through some of the bands who have been on it now. We've literally, like you said, we've got Maiden, we've got Post Malone, but we've also got Paramore, we've got Blondie, Outkast, Blink-182, Muse, Travis Scott, Black Eyed Peas, Cypress Hill. I could go on and on and on. Ariana Grande. How do you get buy-in from labels and management? And what was it like from the start of Beatstar's journey? Because these are literally like the biggest acts in the world. So what is it about Beatstar that you think the music industry has found so appealing, where they want their music in your game?
Yeah, so I think we took quite a different approach than most music games when we were starting Beatstar. I mean, we've had experience with working with IP in the past. I mean, we have a Transformers game, and I think with that, it gave Space Ape the confidence to work with specific IP. I mean, for example, with Transformers, the game team had like this pillar that they wanted to add to the IP. So we made sure that Transformers on the mobile game was the most authentic version of that in gaming. So with that built up a lot of trust with Hasbro, and now they let us design bots that get put into toy production. So, and that's like, you know, officially adding to the lore of Transformers, and that's a strategic partnership instead of just being a licensee. So we took pretty much the exact same approach when it came to music. I mean, first we knew that we wanted to like treat labels and publishers the same, which, you know, with other music games, they use a lot of re-records, the labels of the artists get cut out, and it's just the publishing that gets paid. But we kind of took a hard line that we weren't going to do that, and we wanted to treat everybody fairly and equally. So like for us, it doesn't matter if you're Billie Eilish or you're an unsigned artist from, you know, anywhere really random. I mean, we value all the music in the exact same way. It's equally as valuable to us. So we pay everybody equally across like the recording and the publishing. I think from like a music industry perspective, that's really different in gaming. And it's something that the partnerships have, you know, we've kind of built on and developed. And yeah, instead of just licensing tracks, we've just positioned ourselves as a very strategic partner to the whole industry.
Do you know how many artists you've had in the game so far, and like how many tracks have been in the game? Because it is a staggering track list.
It is absolutely staggering. I mean, it's hard to pinpoint like off the top of my head the amount of artists, but I know for a fact we've got 702 songs currently live in Beatstar and another 232 in Country Star. Across both games, there's only about 5 or 6 songs that are in both games. Everything else is completely unique to their own game.
And then as well, because we've been talking about Country Star a lot, this is literally a genre-specific version of Beatstar for country music. But to think that you can have an entire mobile game, like a rhythm game, which are already like quite niche, you know what I mean? Like big artists aside, like the rhythm game genre is not huge. And then if you just pin that to one genre, but it's been incredibly successful and without like a huge IP behind it as well. Do you know what I mean? Because back in the day, we had rock band The Beatles and rock band Aerosmith or Guitar Hero Aerosmith or whatever else. Like there is no big IP pin to this other than country music. How has that journey been?
Oh my goodness. So like I love Country Star. Like I love Beatstar just as equally.
Yeah.
I think the difference for me is I was on the Country Star project from the moment it kicked off. I mean, I joined the Beatstar team a little bit later, but yeah, country music as a whole, it's the fastest growing genre worldwide at the minute. I mean, country music listenership is up 67% in the UK alone in the last 12 months. So like that just gives an example as to how quickly that genre is scaling right now. I think for us, like we wanted to kind of take the success that we'd had with Beatstar and replicate it in its own genre specific skew. But I mean, it took a lot of time to work out the country was what we were going to go with. I mean, we'd been talking to a lot of the partners and been doing a lot of our research on like the country audiences, and we realized that the demographics are pretty much identical to the demographics that we had in Beatstar, but the audience in country was massively underserved. And I mean, when you think about country music from like the industry perspective, country music doesn't get a lot of sync outside of like barbecue adverts or truck adverts or football placements and that sort of thing. So we had a really great opportunity to work with the partners to be able to deliver quite a significant amount of sync income to artists that wouldn't typically get it.
How did you decide which artists were going to feature in the launch of Country Star? And how does Country Star differ, if at all, from Beatstar? Do you treat them as two completely different, unique SKUs, or like are they both just kind of the same game with different genres? How does all that work?
No, so we actually treat both games completely separately. I mean, Country Star is very much set in the real world, which Beatstar isn't. And Country Star also has this more of an artist first approach. I mean, with Beatstar, you can only really get away with licensing like 2 or 3 songs by the same artist for that game. But with Country Star, you can license like 5 or 6 songs by the same artist because the fans will really dig into their favorite artists in a game like that. I mean, we as an English gaming studio had to be really smart with how we made Country Star because we had to make a game that was one, massive on the American market, but 2, had to fundamentally reach one of the key pillars of country music, which is authenticity. So we need to find a way as like English outsiders to make a game that was truly authentic to the country artists and the fans alike. And I mean, we spent a lot of time in Nashville over the last couple of years. And I mean, one of the first trips that we did was specifically to go and like look at things like the different color lights in different colors of lights in the neon lights down on Broadway, and like random things like the wood textures on the bar and things like that to try and get inspiration to make sure that the game not only felt like it was set in a real world, but was like felt like you were in an original and authentic honky tonk. And I think we took a similar sort of approach with the emerging artists on Beatstar that we did in Country Star. I mean, we spent a lot of time out in Nashville going around to all like the unsigned gig nights and the open mic nights, trying to like work out where like the best pockets of talents are. And I mean, there's this unsigned gig night in Nashville called Whiskey Jam, and a lot of the big artists like Luke Combs and Jelly Roll and Chris Stapleton all played at this Whiskey Jam when they were first starting out in their careers. And I remember going down there one night with Simon, and we watched this guy called John Olier play. And before he'd even reached the chorus of the first song, I was standing there with like my jaw on the floor, and I just looked at Simon and was like, these guys are going in the game. And we literally went to the bar next door straight after the show finished and signed them in the game. And I mean, this artist released his debut album that night, and still it is the best indie unsigned artist album release I have ever heard in my life. So yeah, we've just kind of taken this approach that we want to be able to champion your big artists like your Chris Stapletons and your Luke Combs and all of that, but then make sure we've also got the best emerging talent coming out of Nashville and places like Austin, Texas as well.
I love that. And I also just love that typical, like, waiting for the breakout opportunity, but rather than like 2 guys in suits from like a massive label, it's just like 2 people at a game studio just ready to be like, yep, you're like, this is it kind of thing. Like, absolutely love that.
I mean, country artists specifically never expect to hear their music in a video game. Like, it doesn't even cross their mind. So like when you go up to some of these artists and you show them their music in the game, they're just so excited and overwhelmed by it because it's just not something that they never dreamed of happening. So I think from my perspective, that's so incredibly rewarding, is to see the excitement on these artists' faces because, yeah, music in a video game, something they never expected to do.
You're going to have me hitting you up afterwards, just begging for avant-garde jazz fusion versions. Like, what is the next genre that isn't represented yet? Avant-garde jazz fusion. Let's get some
jazz fusion. I'll take that one to Simon. He'll really appreciate that.
Let's get some tech death metal in there as well. There we go. And mobile games as well, like Beatstar, like Country Star. You've got like teams of data geeks there who need to live and breathe data for decent live ops to like know how to get new downloads, know how to generate new revenue streams. I think it's fair to say that historically, music companies, whether that's labels or startups or whatever else, they don't necessarily make the most of data that's out there. So if there's this underutilization of data, but now there are these like collaborations and partnerships with game studios such as yourself who live and breathe data, is that kind of like another value add to your music partners where you can kind of go, look, we're not just going to bring your music into the game and monetize it or whatever else, but afterwards we can also tell you what kind of demographic of players is engaging with this music. That must be useful, especially when the music industry at large is making a big push for the games industry in general right now.
Oh, 100%. I mean, we're always communicating with the partners on data and kind of working out what we can do with the partners to be able to push content that they're marketing out to these big audiences. I mean, we're really lucky at Space Ape. I mean, Beatstar is one of the most heavily featured apps on the App Store and the Google Play Store, which is absolutely insane. I think because it's got that universal appeal, but when you've got support like that, you're able to deliver on millions and millions of global impressions worldwide. And, that form of marketing isn't the traditional music industry model. So it's slightly more exciting that they're able to get all these data impressions from places that they wouldn't typically look to get.
Do you notice an uptick as well in streams and stuff? Or rather, do labels and management notice like an uptick in streams when their artists are featured in the game?
Definitely. I think it's easier for like smaller artists to notice these upticks because, you've got your AAA superstars, they're getting massive amounts of traffic through their streaming platforms every day. But like a really good example that I like to use is we worked with a small metal band from Germany last year called Chaos Bay. And I mean, we added them to Beatstar about a year ago now. And about a week after they went live in the game, we got an email from them to say that the Beatstar players had increased their streaming figures by 850% in a week because you had all of these players finding them in Beatstar, then listening to their whole back catalogues on streaming platforms. Then those same fans were then going onto their socials to tell them that they found them in the game. And then you even had players buying tickets to their shows. It's just like a lovely 360 of how people are finding music in the game and then becoming like fully fledged fans.
That's sick. What kind of trends have you noticed then with the data you've got? Are there any artists in particular that have been like a really big hit with Beatstar players, or are there any genres like country that have really been a hit with players?
So definitely. I mean, I think one of the biggest hits with the players is the rock. And I think the love for rock in Beatstar is like a nice historical tie to the nostalgic element of Guitar Hero and Rock Band. Because, our fan base is like very millennial and Gen Z. So a lot of the players, they grew up playing these sorts of games. So basically anything that was featured in those games tends to do particularly well. But like Outkast and Run DMC and Gorillaz and Fall Out Boy and Wiz Khalifa are like definitely some of the players' favorites. I mean, we've covered everything in this game, all the way from like pop and rock and hip hop, all the way down to like reggae and K-pop. So there's literally something for everybody in Beatstar.
And I know you do takeovers as well in kind of collaborations. I think the first one I remember seeing that caught my eye was the Eminem collaboration, I think, a while back. And I know you've just done the Post Malone one in Country Star. What's the difference with these big branded takeovers when you have an update themed around an artist? How does that like actually work, and what kind of work goes into making that happen?
Yeah, so I mean, they're quite tricky to pull off because there's like, not only do you have to go through all of the getting the songs approved, you need to get all the art assets approved by the artist management, you need to work out how involved the artist wants to be and all that sort of stuff. But I think for us, it's just being able to deliver something that's more exciting to our players to get involved with. And I think if it's an artist that they love, they're definitely going to want to get involved. I mean, I love working on these artist partnerships. They're definitely like the most favorite part of my job because I get to really push the boundaries of what we're doing. I mean, every time we roll a partnership out, we're always doing something a little bit different, trying to like test the waters and see what we can do. I mean, the one with Post Malone was great, but we did one recently before that in Beatstar with the Killers.
Yeah.
And that was great because the Killers were big fans of the game. And they still are, but we got an email from their management team last year to say that the Killers, they play Beatstar on the tour bus and it's one of their favorite games and they play it with their kids and all that sort of stuff. So we were like, well, maybe there's something here. They want to be more involved. And yeah, we actually had the Killers curate a tour pass for Beatstar, and that was the first time we'd ever had an artist curate a tour pass. And, that was interesting because then the players are playing the Killers' favourite songs. And it's not just songs by the Killers, but like their personal favourites as well.
So the tour pass, is that Beatstar's version of a battle pass? How does that work?
Yeah, so the tour pass is exactly that. It's like a music game battle pass, as we like to call it. So basically, that's how we add new content to the games, how we add new songs. And we do this every 3 weeks on both games. And we basically have a free version and a premium version. And what that does is it's 30 days worth of content. You play through different levels and you collect songs and other rewards like banners and emotes and other stuff like that. We add 9 songs every 3 weeks to Beatstar and 6 to Country Star every 3 weeks. And we're always trying to make sure we've got, especially in Beatstar, a wide range of like genres and artists and fame levels of artists and all that sort of stuff.
How do you balance that though? Because obviously there's so much music out there, like not even historically, like there's so much music coming out on a daily basis, so many new songs that are coming out. How do you actually decide what makes it into the game? Is there a way to put a numeric split on you guys being proactive with your outreach and then licensors, labels getting in touch? Like, is there a split there, like 40-60, 50-50? Or like, how do you actually decide what makes it into the game?
Oh, yeah, I would definitely say it's about 70% us choosing and then 30% labels pitching. I mean, we always have to choose songs that are going to make exciting gameplay. Not every great song is going to make exciting gameplay, but it needs to have like a compelling hook or be like rhythmically complex. And I think the more up-tempo the track is, the more compelling it's going to be. So we always have that lens that we look through when we're looking for songs, but we try to mix it with a really good range of catalogue songs by massive artists, karaoke style songs that everybody knows the words to, mixed with like a combination of the top priorities for the label and the top songs on the Billboard Hot 100. And then on top of that, we're also trying to champion unsigned artists and emerging artists into that mix as well.
Is there a secret formula? Is there like a recipe to success in terms of when you're looking to sync stuff, do you kind of go, BPM needs to be 120 to 140, track length needs to be like, how are the full tracks that make it into Beatstar, or do you have to shorten stuff down, catering for like the attention span of players? Or
so all of our songs across both games are the exact same length. They're all 150 seconds. So we do have to cut them down slightly, but I don't think there's a winning formula. I think with us, we kind of work out what we think the players are going to like based on what they tell us and the genres that they specifically like the most. And yeah, we just take a really good guess at trying to work out what the players are going to enjoy, what they're going to find new and exciting. And yeah, we just hope that they love it. And 9 times out of 10, they do.
And your move now to being in-house at a game studio compared to working in the music industry prior, how do you think the music industry at large currently views like video games? And do you think there is still a bit of education that needs to happen? Or do you think in general, the people who need to be aware of what gaming can do for their artists are already aware?
I think gaming is definitely becoming like a rising star in the music industry at the minute. And it's something that's becoming incredibly valuable to music partners from a strategic perspective. I mean, it's really great to see that the music industry is starting to push boundaries with gaming, especially with like Beatstar, but then you've got Fortnite and Roblox that are massively expanding on their music stuff. But, the music industry needs to find ways to reach new audience. And I mean, 90% of people have games on their phone, 85% of people play one at least every week. I mean, Beatstar and Country Star, they provide a great fan service and allow the partners to tap into a dedicated audience in a completely different way than their non-traditional methods. I mean, I still feel like there's definitely some sort of disconnect within the industry, but that's something that's definitely rapidly changing. I mean, we're very lucky at Space Ape. We have such great relationships that the music industry really understands our market and the value that we can bring to the table, especially in terms of marketing for their artists. So, yeah, I definitely think the disconnect is closing quite considerably at the minute.
And without going into specific numbers, like what kind of terms are you working with when you get artists into the game?
We have what we like to call an MFN deal. So it's fair for absolutely everybody involved. As I said, it's everybody gets the same pay. Everybody gets the same rate. I mean, we do have like a royalty pool, so where we put the majority, like quite a large share of our revenue into this pool. And then we divide that up based on song plays to the artists and the labels. But that's basically it. The main thing is that everybody gets paid equally and treated fairly. And I think when you're working with AAA superstars and emerging artists, I think that's really important to value everybody the same.
Do you think a sync in a video game can be more beneficial than film and or TV? Or flipping that on its head, have you had any feedback from partners on the music side who have kind of gone, we really weren't expecting like this level of like engagement or this level of performance, like this has really outperformed what we were expecting?
Definitely. I mean, we hear it quite a lot that, especially on the artist partnerships, or another big thing we do is we do a lot of pre-save campaigns for our music partners, and we're able to drive some crazy numbers on those for them. And I think they're always a little bit shocked. I mean, we have the capabilities in both games where we can push a pre-save link out to 70 million players worldwide, and we can drive anywhere from like 400,000 clicks on that link to 800,000 clicks on that link in a week. And I mean, when you're a label and you sign a new artist and you're trying to get the word out about them, and we can drive anywhere from like 18,000 pre-saves to 100,000 actual pre-saves on an album, that's great for the partners, because then when the album or the single comes out, that increases your streaming playlisting. It also increases where you place on the charts and all this other things. So yeah, I think in terms of results on that, the partners are always shocked at the numbers that we can deliver.
When it comes to KPIs for your music partners, what do you think is their priority? Like, is it a case of they want that big advance or whatever and they see Beatstar as a revenue generator, or like you just mentioned, is the biggest benefit to them actually getting in front of gamers, which could potentially be a new, younger audience, depending on that artist demographic?
Yeah, so I definitely think it's less about getting the payment. I mean, obviously, labels always love that, and, that's just the standard. But I think the big value for them comes purely from our marketing and being able to deliver their artists and their music out to players that they wouldn't typically be able to reach.
And then you've got Country Star. Beatstar is still going well. Dare I ask, what is next? Like, can Beatstar fans, Country Star fans, fans of all of these other different genres of music, can they eventually maybe expect a spin-off at some point in the future? Like, Country Star's been successful, so why not do that for metal or rock or pop?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, I never want to say never. We never know what's around the corner. I mean, we took 2 years between launching Beatstar and deciding to move forward with Country Star. And I think, we're still very early on in Country Star at the minute. We're still trying to like get our head around everything, especially on like the genre specific side. But yeah, I never say never. Space Ape, things at Space Ape are always changing, always for the better. And yeah, we'll just have to wait and see what happens next.
Always cooking up exciting things. And then final question I'd like to ask is, obviously, you've come from the world of music into the world of gaming. I would love to hear like 2 or 3 things that have maybe really taken you by surprise now that you're in-house at a game studio, and maybe how those things could be used as lessons for labels or for licensors who want to get their music synced into a video game like Beatstar or Country Star.
So yeah, I would definitely say that, labels and managers and people like that shouldn't underestimate gaming. I think it's definitely seen as like the dark horse, and people definitely don't see it in the same light as they do traditional forms of music marketing, but like the audience is definitely there. And not only is it there, it's way more highly engaged than people initially think. I mean, as I said, we've got 70 million players worldwide across the franchise now. And I think with the music games, it's very different to streaming. Like when you're listening to a song on streaming, you can do 10 million other things. But when you're playing a game in Beatstar or Country Star, you have to be fully immersed and fully concentrate. And I think for labels and managers and people like that, they don't seem to realize that the players are becoming fully immersed in their artist music. So they're listening to it and engaging with it in a completely different way. And I think that is far more valuable than listening to it on a streaming platform because of the way you're interacting with the music.
And it makes me wonder as well, because these are both mobile games, and I'm sure Simon and the rest of the Space Ape team will agree, there is not enough visibility, whether that's from like a press perspective or just like consumer perspective in general. There is not enough noise around like how big the mobile games industry in particular is. I think the latest figures show that mobile games generate 49% of global gaming revenue. Yeah. And like, it's not just about the money, obviously, like the user base. There's so many people playing on mobile, especially outside of the West, because people don't have decent broadband connections or whatever, but they've got 5G, they've got a smartphone, they can play Beatstar, but they can also play the likes of like PUBG Mobile, which is massive, and Roblox. I think most of Roblox's player base, I think, is also on mobile. So I think there's something there as well, because whenever I see people talking about video games on the music industry, a lot of the conversation seems to be, have you seen what Fortnite has done? Or have you seen what Roblox has done? And it's like, okay, cool. Like, there's some really cool stuff happening on those two platforms, but also Beatstar, Country Star, like all of these other mobile games. Like, is that something that you found as well, where like when the music industry starts wising up to mobile a bit more, they're a bit like, never really knew that mobile games were like a thing still? Because I think there still is maybe like a misconception that a lot of people think mobile games, you think, Candy Crush, whatever else kind of thing. But there's so much more now.
Oh, yeah. Mobile gaming is so diverse compared to what it used to be. And I think, yeah, Fortnite and Roblox definitely get brought up a lot, especially in like the music and gaming space. I think, you know, with Beatstar and Country Star, the audience is so massive. And I think one thing that's always shocks partners and people like that is the revenue. Like Beatstar and Country Star combined, we've done 150 million in gross bookings now. I mean, and that's in less than 3 years, which when you think about a mobile game, especially for me, is wild. The sheer scale is one thing that shocked me completely when I first came into mobile gaming, because you don't realize it is so huge.
Right, Jessica, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. It's been great.
Okay, we're going to move on to Done in 60 Seconds. We're going to recommend something to each other. Normally it's music, it doesn't have to be. So I'm going to cheat and steal one of Pierre's picks. He was our guest last time on GXM 27. He is a maven of video game music. He listens to absolutely everything. Media Molecule released another game within their game engine Dreams called Tren. And the soundtrack is called Tren Tracks. Ha, very good. See what you did there. And yeah, it's got one of my favourite composers, Todd Baker, has done a lot of stuff in this alongside Tom Quillfeldt and Ed Hargreave. It's just some absolute killer kind of pop and rock and chill out, and really, really well produced and fun and upbeat and chilled out. And yeah, I picked one of the more mellow tracks because that's my vibe. And again, shout out to Todd Baker, who came to my attention through, I think, Monument Valley 2. He's a fantastic composer. So this is called Early Hours.
So I listened through Tren Tracks, but somehow didn't listen to this song. So this was an absolute delight. It sounds like sitting on a porch in your best wooden chair, sipping a moderately warm beer, but not caring as the sun comes down. There is nothing to do. The day is at its end, but it doesn't matter. You've got your warm beer, you wish it was cold, but everything's great.
Pure vibes.
Pure vibes. Are you ready for mine?
Yeah, I'm ready for yours. Let's go.
I'm going to keep this short and sweet because my words cannot do this song the justice it deserves. This is the music from Stage 1 in Silver Surfer on the NES, composed by Jeff Furling. It is a song that, like the rest of the soundtrack, goes unnecessarily hard for the generally linear nature of the game. Loads of wacky synth, kind of out there time signatures. There's a lot going on, and it's just fantastic.
Oh my word, that is unbelievable. And you know what the most unbelievable thing is about that? It's not even a SNES track, it's a NES track. They make it so listenable and bonkers and just riff-tastic. But the solo work reminds me of like Instagram keyboard show-off artists at the moment, just trying to do something as flashy as they can in 10 seconds. But this track just keeps going and going and going and getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and then riffing out. And the musicianship that, you know, hopefully doesn't get buried by the chip, you know, in the chiptune past, is just incredible. And that's all we have time for on the GXM podcast. Thanks so much for joining us as we explore the intersection between video games and music. Please be sure to subscribe and leave us a review on your podcast service of choice, especially Apple Podcasts. You can find us on Twitter and Instagram at GXM Podcast. If you've got any feedback, hit us up at gxmpodcast@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. Thanks to 8 Beats Radio for amplifying the show. It was produced by both of us. It was edited by me. Music is by Zach Foster and show art is by Joshua Klein. Go to bed. Close the door, please. Thank you. Bye.